G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 3rd of July 2026. I'm your host, the author David Applegate. Sorry about my voice, a bit croaky today. There's a lot of news to cover, so let's begin. Alright, so Kiev has been hit multiple times, as well as Kryvyi, Zaporozhye about 6 times. Let's see. We got Dnipro, Polovarad is starting to become a member of the frequently attacked club. And of course, the often attacked Kharkiv. Now, as far as I've read, there was a drone attack on a communication center in Kharkiv, which Russians said was a relay station for drones. We never know. Often radio repeaters are used for many things. It's not uncommon for it to have multiple uses. Ukraine seems to love to stick them on post offices for some reason. But then again, so did the Nazis. Alright, so they're claiming Ukraine was hit. Now, here we go. Yeah, all around central Ukraine. And they actually name it too. The Nova Piskunovka Logistics Center. Oh, there goes your Amazon parcels, everyone. Alright, so, Sibby was hit by airstrikes from aircraft. Yeah, Russian aircraft over Ukraine is rare, considering, well, I don't mean frontline, I go up to the front line, fire and peel off. I mean actually flying over enemy territory is rare indeed. But coming in low and fast with not much border to cross, and I think it's not as daring a raid as, say, Nazi Germany, but it's still the modern equivalent, which is to say not much, though it's still a risk. Northern buffer zone, active, though not expanding. The border, the Lugansk border buffer zone is expanding, but very slowly. Now, in Donetsk, we have some expansion in the Lyman area, but not much. This is where, I'm going to mispronounce this one, of course, Piskunovka has fallen. Now, only street fighting in the Russians have assault forces have pushed into Piskunovka again. Now, I think the Ukrainians report they repelled them, but Kiev Independent has them still fighting. So, is one or the other? Who knows? It could be, like all news cycles, the different news reporters are just grabbing the stories in order as they get them, and they're not reading the feed. So most likely that's why I say it's not always fake news. It's just they often have no regard to actually check whether or not by the time to check, because particularly in war, don't think that there won't be a 9th attack. You have to have a specific news cycle, though. I get it. And I think it's poor wording. Again, it's the fact that most languages other than English are not precise. They do not care about precision. But a lot of English speakers don't care about precision or using the right word. All right, so yeah, little bits here and there is all we got from the Russians today. Nothing significant has fallen. It does not look like uh, Koshnikovia is going to be the quick resolution, but it's not going to. The Ukrainian counterattacks seem to be nowhere to be found either. Oh, I thought they would have pushed. I thought the men and machines pushing forward, but they only seem to be, for now, bolstering Cremont's crew here. Of course, reinforcements have been sent to Lyman. Now, monthly rotations are not hidden, they're just not publicized. So you got to go through a lot. And you notice that Ukraine put out an article yesterday. I was going to dismiss it, but I think it needs to be talked about, saying the Russian soldiers are not lasting. Well, if you consider the rate they claim, yeah, the Russian army would be dead by now if the Ukrainian media was accurate. And they forget to say one thing. Oh, yes, we killed this many Russians, but we forgot to add that we lost this much territory. And we haven't regained much territory in counterattacks. And most of our and the next month we lose that territory and the men we put in it. Like the 148 they just lost in Koshnikovia. Allegedly, according to Telegram. And that's the thing, isn't it? That the fluidity of war. You know that if you're winning, you wouldn't need to be talking about how many enemy soldiers you killed every day. That's just propaganda. That's just trying to demoralize. Well, actually, I don't know if it's trying to demoralize the Russians more or bolster their own side, but it's propaganda, and it's cruel and gruesome propaganda. It's exciting. It's to excite the low IQ into chimping out, thinking that this, we crush, never thinking about the suffering they've inflicted on themselves. Now, it's an interesting article to read, but if you look up who really owns Crimea, and the answer obviously is Crimeans. They wanted to be independent. They voted to break away. When the Soviet Union broke up, however, Europe, Russia, China, and all the other powers got together and told them, no, you're part of Crimea now. The UN demanded they be part of Crimea, be part of Ukraine. The people there didn't want to be part of Ukraine. They were forced to be part of Ukraine. And in 2014, when their votes were torn up at the City Hall, they rioted and overrun the City Hall. The Ukrainian authorities left. They declared themselves independent. Normally, flag-waving Americans would have raced in. Billy Bob Clinton on his white horse going, we value the independence of Crimea. No, they didn't. They joined in a chorus of voices behind Britain demanding the Russians evacuate Crimea and hand it back to the Ukrainians. It's all pandering for politics. There's no morality in it. Now, whether or not you want to say, oh, but the Crimean Tatars aren't the first people to settle, that's neither here nor there. The fact that it's 70% Russian, ethnic Russian, doesn't mean they wanted to be Russian either. But in the vote, it came down to either independent. It came down to, right, the fact that they can't defend themselves. So they decided that the only option was to be Russian because of the way that the Ukrainians treat ethnic Russians and particularly the ethnic Tatars. If you look at the few schools and I think Sevastopol University, hardly any Crimeans. Well, everything was either given to foreigners or Ukrainians. Look at the conditions of their roads, their schools, their you don't take over an area and turn it into your country. But the rest of the world, the UN doesn't know what to do, because if they want to decolonize Crimea, then they have to send the ethnic Ukrainians home, because they're not the ethnic Ukrainians are the migrants. If you go by the fact that the Tatars were there before the Slavs, because they don't forget, they're all descendants of the people who fought over Crimea. It's the same with the Donbas. They're all descendants of the people who fought over that land in a war between Sweden and Russia. Crimea had different wars as well, the Turks. No one wants to address anything other than UN resolutions. But how unbiased is the UN? It's all petty politics. Every time someone doesn't get their way, and I mean that goes for Russia and China. Russia, I don't think China has a veto, but Russia has vetoed just as much as America. They veto each other all the time for tit for tat. So there's no trust. There's no foundation for UN morality. So if you go by the UN, the majority votes. Well, the majority will vote for Islamification of every country. That's how stupid you are when it comes to majority rules. That's why republics exist. The Roman Republic, the Greek Republic, all these republics that we established in the past were to protect rights of all citizens equally. There was no equality, right? If you're an Arab, yes, you had the same legal rights, but you weren't allowed to become a citizen. That's a modern thing. That actually was an imperialist thing, actually, making foreigners a citizen of your land. That's that's an imperialist holdover from the Roman and British empires, making people subjects to crown rule. So Crimea doesn't want to be part of that. Yeah, so the question that raised in the UN, who owns Crimea? Well, for once they got it right. It's the Crimeans, but they won't listen to the Crimeans, which is weird. Or any of these people. So we go around the map and we see the toll of that arrogance and ignorance that the Russians feel that because America can go into Iraq or Serbia, that they can do the same. You set the precedent. You walked into Kosovo and called it liberation, so now they're walking into the Donbas and calling it liberation. I've always warned you, everything you can do, they will do to you, just like the Chinese went into Tibet. They called it liberation. Everything. Every time. Every word, every action can be written and reinterpreted over and over and over again until all words lose meaning, because the UN has no moral foundation, no protection of rights. The rights are so subjective now. They say, oh, you have the right to a sex life. No, you don't. You have the right to stimulate yourself. That's okay. But you don't have the right to someone else's body. And sex or not. You don't have the right to someone else's body, or someone else's labor, or someone else's wealth. But they don't want to see it that way, because once you start going in that route of rights, it destroys the communist agenda. And if you can't treat your enemies the same as you treat your friends, then you have no moral foundation. If you did not want Russia to conquer this territory, you should have honored the Minsk Accords, in which the republics who declared their independence, and in the last 50 years, how many independence claims has the US supported? That's an interesting question, isn't it? I'll make it since World War II, because that narrows down the search a bit better than saying 50 years. Oh, I misspelt the word, so I got a bad result. I'm sorry. Since World War II, officially recognised well over 100 independent nations. Probably decolonisation was the biggest, yeah. The dissolution of the Soviet bloc was, yeah. Free associated states, yeah. Pacific, yeah. A couple of islands broke off. Sudan, yeah. So over time it has diminished, but of course that would be, yeah, dozens of new nations, yeah. That was the biggest. And the independence claims of 15 Soviet blocs, yeah. But various states emerging from the breakup of Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia, yeah. But when they didn't want to break up Ukraine for some reason. Uh, okay. Okay. Ukrainians. Yeah, the Ukrainians voted for independence, yep. But there was a failed coup attempt, right? Independence in Ukraine 91, decision ratified. So it was Budapest Memorandum. It was the Budapest Memorandum that forced it. So it was forced by United States, Russia, and China. China, who was the guarantor at the time of Ukraine, by the way. So it was China who created this mess. Anybody surprised? Yeah, but how many independence claims? Well over 100 independence claims. Now, the Donbas was voiced out by the vote. And they agreed and honoured to it until they found out their votes were cut up and never counted in any election. Yet that's always dismissed by the left as a conspiracy theory. Yet because it benefits the left, you can't take their word for it. Now, there's no independent investigation. And you can't get one because most of the actions are performed by the left and they just sit there in silence. Because remember, when it comes to the left, they have generations of inbreeding and indoctrination. You can't rise to the position of power in the unions unless you're a multi-generational union. And you've already proven your loyalty through whatever cover-up or crime you participated in the early days. Or scab bashing or any other activities they engage in. So it's like the mafia. It really is. And until people recognise you don't give your autonomy to anyone else, right? You always retain your autonomy. That's what's wrong with a lot of these organisations, is they're full of people who give away their autonomy and follow orders. because they want to be part of an organisation that protects them. You try to create an organisation that protects people without such scumbaggery, and they'll just convince you to change the laws because people just are not that adamant yet to protect their autonomy. That's why we have a war in the Donbas and Crimea, is because people want to protect their autonomy. It's why we're having uprisings in Ireland now, is because they want to protect their autonomy. And it's going to just happen more. Now, these strings of attacks in a straight line are not unusual, by the way, particularly if they are, let's say, overflight target designated, usually a high altitude aircraft. We know now, right, that during World War II, there were stratospheric aircraft already then. During World War II, there were high altitude aircraft, too high up to reach was, and I think the range on a lot of guns were only 1 mile. I'm talking about flat guns, not horizontally, vertically. It's the same. A lot of these very specific targets, they're all along a supply route. They follow the contours of land, roads, and you can see them, the squiggly blue lines, all leading to Kremovsk. Yeah. These were created all the way back in the days of the Soviet Union by Stalin, reshaping rivers, diverting rivers, creating canals, blasting away rock and sand and clay. I believe on some canal projects as many as 100,000 died. The survivors usually settled the towns they built along the way. That's why there is a lot of Russians in Crimea. Now, of course, a lot of them are disconnected from the Soviet Union and only recently disconnected from Ukraine. A lot of them did identify, and about half the ethnic Russians in Ukraine still identify as Ukrainians. That's why it's so bitterly divided right now. But it's irony that Ukraine talks about mass arrests in Russia when there are mass arrests of dissenters in Ukraine. But remember, the left's favourite motto, it's not fascism when we do it. A brief reminder that this channel is sponsored by you, the viewing audience. Empire Valves, that's one word, empirevalves.myshopify.com, your one-stop shop for enchanting treasures based on my writing. Overnight attack, Ukraine is claiming 570 drones and not mentioning where they hit, of course. Not entirely true, but that article doesn't mention, but a few have been mentioned, which is unusual. But it is going towards European openness. But here they go. We will take revenge. Yes, Adolf. For every bomb that falls on Berlin, 10,000 will fall on London! Yeah. Did I tell you how the Nazis lost the war? See, while the Enigma machine was trying to decode all the German messages, they had an Enigma machine, but they didn't have the code book. So they were trying to figure out how it was used and so they had to create a recombination. And that was taking too long. And then suddenly one day they realised there's messages both ways. And they found a sequence in a lot of the messages. 2 words destroyed the German army. Sieg Heil. Because so many put it at the end of their messages. So that created a code print where there was the same footprint over and over in the same codes, which enabled their codes to be broken because they knew exactly which combinations were used. All they had to look for was the string of words at the end that were all similar in the replies, and then they could set the machine the Turing machine and get the right combination. And instead of waiting days for decoding, they could do it within minutes. And they would have the planners ready, knowing where German supplies were going to be, the German attacks are going to launch. And they were able, and combined with Canaris and other traders inside the German high command, who decided that Adolf had to go. Yeah. So this is why, right, Ukraine is trying to push the same narrative, the same, betray Stalin. We're just after Stalin. I mean, Putin, the same thing, right? They're trying to convince Russians to turn, but the Russians aren't falling for it. Saying that we're just fighting to protect loved ones. We just want revenge for our dead loved ones. But the problem is, so do the Russians, because Ukrainian drones are attacking civilians. Every day, they shell Belgrade. There have been photos, pictures, walkthroughs. No one wants to notice. People tune out. As I said, this war is taking a turn. Russia's Citadel system. This is the new land-based turret anti-aircraft system. And for now, it has just the 30mm cannon. Now, I do not know why, so you can't ask me because I don't know the answer yet. Why they're not using the Tor turret they've put on others, because that would be a good question. And my question is, my prediction is, for now, Russia doesn't have the processing power and the industrial capability to produce enough of. So they've put the Tor system onto mobile man-made systems, and the AI Citadel system is just separate because they don't have enough power yet, enough AI systems yet, and enough of them yet. So they don't have enough Citadels. They don't have enough chips to make their other systems AI linked, and they don't have enough AIs anyway to link all these systems. So they have to delegate, maximize. Now the problem with now, I know Ukrainians, I said they're conducting 25,000 transactions an hour with the system in Taiwan. I forget its name. It's not a public system anyway. But, of course, that's under agreement. They only have access because the Taiwans have access to the information. And the Taiwanese want copies of any Chinese-made drones. Now, isn't it weird that Ukraine is honouring its agreement with Taiwan, but not Poland? They have not supplied the drone technology to Poland, which is unusual, to say the least. But a Polish commentator and a Ukrainian commentator did get together, and they both agree that it's fanatical Ukrainians. And they believe that, for now, they believe that they have Zelensky's ear, and Zelensky is not listening to more reasonable voices telling him to lighten up and honour his word. Zelensky has been told something, obviously, and he thinks that Poland is trying to ruin his ascension of Ukraine. So there's a lot of politicking behind the scenes. And what's it got to do with AI? Well, I think, right, one of the reasons is that Zelensky did not go with Poland or on the Ukrainian AI systems and honour their agreements that they did have for technology transfers. Because Poland is starting to realise that those aircraft are never going to be paid for. So Zelensky's deciding, to do what past Ukrainian leaders have. Pretend the bills don't exist. Just let them bark, because no one's going to invade Ukraine to get or take out one of the leaders. No one has, right? The Soviet Union. You can look up all the internal conflicts in the Soviet Union now, and you can see how many times Ukraine's name comes up. Often petty disputes over grain not shipped. And when you realise how unproductive Ukraine was, no wonder the Soviet Union collapsed, because all these countries were saying, yes, we're getting millions of tons of grain from Ukraine, and then turn around and buy it from Canada at a much higher price. And they just let Ukraine keep the money that they took. Ukraine isn't the breadbasket of Europe. It's the lying. It's the liar of the Soviet Union. It's the biggest black tongue in the Soviet Union. And it's still acting like it can get away with it. And for now, the West is letting it. And that's the danger. If you let someone into the EU with that mentality, no. This is not about stopping Ukraine from getting into the EU. Poland just doesn't want them to bring that attitude with them. Poland isn't against, and I don't know why people think Poland is against. Hungary was against it because of their attitude, how they treat their fellow Slavs, how they reach into your pocket, take and never give back. Russia has said it many times. Take them, but carve out a buffer zone. And no one listens. Well, Trump listened, but then the rest of America decided to have a collective hissy fit. Because how dare you listen to someone else, right? Yet Trump is trying to get you the least amount of wars in history. Something that is pretty much, even going back to Andrew Jackson's day, is not something you could control. But the Interpol has updated its fugitive, but like all Ukrainian fugitives, although might be wrong, Interpol may actually arrest them once they get outside of Ukraine, like that for Ukrainian agent who was supposedly on holiday. I bet he wasn't on holiday, but he went to Romania and was captured by Interpol and taken to Germany on a red notice. The red notices don't go away, by the way. I think there's no statute of limitations on this one either. But this Ukrainian woman carried out a bombing, booby-trapped the residence of I believe, a Russian oligarch. Might have been former Ukrainian. Yeah, former Ukrainian, oligarch, yeah. This is like the third Ukrainian attack on a former Ukrainian. And I don't know how many. There's been at least a dozen attacks in the last month. There's Monaco, Cyprus, Romania, several times. Ukrainians were kicked out of Poland for, they said, anti-Polish activities. But I noticed they were deported to Ukraine, not Russia. So you can say what you want in the media, but at the end of the day, they were deported to Ukraine, not Russia. So they weren't spying for Russia now, were they? But this is unprecedented. This is the surveillance state. She got in on a false passport, wandered around, found the address, looked if anybody was home, saw them upstairs, and planted the device, and just walked out of Monaco. Because remember, police are reactionary. They're not proactive. when they get secure, they probably realized, now, this was a family. No matter what the father did, his son and wife were caught in the blast. Now, according to French media reports, he was called to testify on Ukrainian corruption. Oh yeah, and the people who complained the most about Epstein just released the sex offender, pardoned him, removed his criminal record as a sex offender. The Party of Women wiped out a sex offender's record. Yeah, so much for protecting women, right? How long ago did I say that one of the best things Russia could do is just line up men on the border and say, skeet shoot? And here they are, skeeting. Now, there's a 545, believe it or not, full grain 545 can sometimes outrange a 762 because don't forget, heavier, more gravity. So it slows down faster, depending on the grainage, of course, depending on many factors. But after exiting this barrel, the skeet slowly expands. Skeet balls. Skeet usually uses shot, and you have different types of shot. But the reason why the military don't use shot is, I believe, something that dates back to World War One. Shotguns, large and because shotguns are heavy, yep, unlimited, uneffective. Because of the ranges they operate, they're ineffective, yeah. But if you could create a long-range shotgun, a long-range skeet, 500 to 600 meters, shooting down drones, considering most can't lift higher than 500 meters. Atmospheric pressure, by the way, shift. It's like, why can't planes fly higher? Lift. You need more power to achieve higher lift. That's why in World War One, a lot of biplanes were shot down by ground fire because they were so close to the ground. Yeah, up to 300 meters, so 300 to 500. Yeah, yeah. These are more effective and cheaper than electronic warfare, and most of your drones are only 300 to 500 meters. With electronic warfare, you actually got to be on target all the time for at least, I think, 3 seconds, maybe 5. And as you can see, that's just a file photo, but as you can see, Russia has quite the small arms range, including shoulder-launched, and various gyro-stabilized launchers. But it's the guns you should really be paying attention to because they're pretty. They're 7.62s, but yeah, Kalashnikov is shortening the AK-19 rifle for NATO cartridge. Why is that? Because I believe they've captured a huge stockpile of NATO rounds and have done this before. Now, for those who don't know, there's been a tit for tat going on in Ukraine over nuclear power, particularly Zaporozhye. Zaporozhye has one of the largest reactors, Russian-built, Russian-operated reactors in Europe. Now, when Russia took over initially, the operators reverted back to the company Rostom. The Rostom operators built and were contracted to maintain the Ukrainian power plant. The Ukrainian power plant, however, was confiscated after the fall of the Soviet Union by the Ukrainian state and given to an energy company. So a lot of corruption on both sides of this conflict. So now you have a standoff because both sides have attacked the security guards at well, because you've got the Ukrainian security guards on one side and the Russian security guards on the other. And they've attacked each other, and outsiders have attacked with and for. But there are Russian forces in Zaporozhye. And despite Ukraine's attempts, have not been able to unseat them for several years now. So you think they're going to take Crimea? They can't even get 120 Russians out of Zaporozhye. Now, there are agreements in place. Were agreements. Ukraine just won't honour them. And then every time they provoke the Russians, every time the Russians fight back, the Ukrainians go to the UN screaming, "The Russians attacked me again." So what do you do? What do you do when the UN has no morality? And I think that's the biggest problem in the Ukraine war right now, is the UN doesn't know how to resolve a situation. They've never successfully solved a situation. Well, it's almost as if government's the problem, not the solution. So we have a war because the majority don't know how to stand up for rights and have a uniform, consistent standard on rights. And if you're going by land rights, the people of Britain have every right to deport every foreigner. Not so much the Irish or the Scots, I'm talking about, or perhaps maybe even the Anglos. But draw a line in the sand and say, right, everybody who came after the Magna Carta as a foreigner, get lost. Well, what about the black people? Nope. They were brought over, but they were slaves brought over by Romans. They're Africans. Get lost. Indians. We've been here for centuries. Yes, so was Britain and India. Fuck off. If you don't learn, all these well-to-do, well-heeled women who run around talking about decolonialism. Okay, let's decolonize Cyprus and hand it back to the Cypriots. Let's decolonize North Africa and hand it back to the Greek Roman. What's it called? Sardinian, I think. There were about 6 groups. None of them who are Arabs. No, the Semites. Yeah. The Semites did settle some areas, so yeah. Get rid of all the Arab. Get rid of all the Muslims out of Turkey. They're all from Turkmen. They're not Turks. They hand it back to the Greeks. You want to decolonize the world, eh? Send all the Africans from Jamaica home then. Reparations, yeah. Free boat ride back to Africa. You want to decolonize? They're talking about decolonizing Ukraine. Well, the Ukrainians are colonizers just as much as Russia. The oldest settlement in Ukraine only dates back, I think, 11th century. Yeah, the Greeks were the first to settle Crimea. Tatars were there the longest, consistent. Yeah. Grant their independence. Let the Russians protect it. Why is it skin off your nose? Because the Ukrainians cry about it? Why you care about Ukraine? They don't care about you. They're just another hand in your pocket. Oh, but Jesus. And that's what it comes down to, isn't it? You're bejesus. Oh, what would bejesus do? But everything Jesus said talked about was within your own country and within your own community. And refugee is a temporary status, not a permanency. And he was talking about your neighbours, not someone 5 countries over, or 500, or 500, or 5,000 miles away. No, you change the meaning of words to suit yourself. And we all know what it's really about, isn't it? You only care about the refugees because you want money for your church. Because you want your church because you don't want to pay for your own church functions. You don't want to pay for your own church's roof. You don't even want to pay your own priest. You want everyone else to pay for your comforts. Or for your indulgences, I should say. Because that's what it comes down to, isn't it? What it's really about. That you want the attention, and you want a pat on the head, and you want a little gold star beside your name. Because you're really, in reality, you're 6 years old, aren't you? Because that's what it really is, isn't it, liberal? You're 6 years old. You want your pat on the head. You want your bejesus. You want your black Jesus. Yeah, you want your black Jesus. You want a pat on the head. But you won't go to Africa, will you? You want your brown people, but you won't go to live in India. So you import them because you want your luxuries. You want to walk down the street and feel like a world cruise, don't you? You want a Turkish kebab. You want your or Turkish delight. You want your Turkish coffee or your Greek coffee or your Arab coffees. You want your exotic teas from China. You want your exotic foods. Because you're so bored with your own culture. You don't want to do a day's work in the kitchen. You want others to work in the kitchens because you think it's all beneath you. You don't want to have children because you think it's all beneath you. But at the end of the day, you're still going to turn into an old person. And they're going to discard you like everything else. Because you're no longer useful to them, are you? And now you're figuring that out. And you wish you had children. But it's too late, isn't it? For most of you. So you pity Ukraine because you want to feel for the underdog because it's the only excitement you've got left in your life. Congratulations, Liberal, you're an asshole. People have been warning you to take responsibility, to stand up for yourself. And by the way, no successful attack. Well, I was going to say there was no successful attack, but there was an update. And I did that there was a strike on Mariupol, and a short time ago there was a drone strike in Sumy in retaliation. Yeah. In retaliation for this, retaliation for that, retaliation. They're all out of water anyway. Belgrade, yeah, see, look. That's in Russia. Ukraine attacks Russia. See, 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, 4 hours ago, a day ago. Yeah. So the Ukrainians attacked Belgrade, and then Russia attacked Sumy, and the Ukrainians say, "Oh, terrorism, terrorism." Yeah, they retaliated, and they will continue to retaliate. And you notice, and if you haven't noticed, okay, I'm telling you, I've noticed that Russia seems to be attacking the exact same targets that Ukraine attacks. Like when they attacked the Kursk power station, Russia attacked all the Ukrainian power stations. Yes, Russia does escalate. Yes, I've noticed that too. And it ain't going to stop. Because you don't want to respect rights. You don't want to respect your word. When you don't respect the word, when you don't respect the law, either you change the law through peaceful means, or you get the fuck out of the way for those who understand. It's not about the liberal world order or the new world order, by the way, Jay. I saw your message. And I didn't reply to you because you don't understand. You always miss the mark, and I don't know why. Yeah, I think you deliberately provoked me, that's it. I think you're trying to deliberately provoke me, and that's because I didn't respond, you unsubscribed. Well, too bad, so sad. You think I care when you cry? You think I care when anybody cries anymore? I'm sick of crying. For the last 50-odd years of my life, all I've done is heard people cry and never contribute anything in their life. Cry about their rights, but they've never cried for Henry Novak, They never cried for any of the victims of of the 19,000 white boys murdered. They never cried about the 60 million abortions. No. All they care about is their own. Cry for me, cry for my little causes. You fuck your little causes. Your little causes are always somewhere, some far off country that doesn't give a shit about you. Just sees you as an useful idiot. And you are an idiot. Because you take selective passages of the Bible and then you even spit on the Bible. Remember all the child abuse in churches that they went on and on and on about, and all those people left churches. Yet we hear that, in fact, child abuse was actually rampant in the Islamic community and was covered up. That was all a distraction. And all these people, do you see any Muslim leaving the Islamic religion or closing mosques because of child abuse? No, they all rally around the abuser, don't they? And you have no morals. Ukraine was the centre of child sex trafficking. You have no morals. You have done nothing about it. Not one single case prosecuted. All they've done was shut down websites, shut down companies, but no arrests. No arrests. In 30 years, there have been virtually no one in Ukraine prosecuted for major crimes. They've all they people do go to prison, but never the bosses. The bosses just keep getting richer. Politicians get accused of corruption and they resign and leave Ukraine, but they don't lose It's the small fry who go to prison though, every time. And the Europeans are not doing anything. It's all talk. All this talk about Ukraine ascending into Europe. It's the same thing all across Europe. They talk. It's all the appearance without the actual hard work of justice. Because justice is hard work. Justice is sometimes realizing that you have to prove your case, but they go so far. But they take years to prove their case, and nothing happens to the people who they prove the case against. They go back to them. They go just retire for being caught. Only the small fry go to prison. So fuck your European world order. It's corruption. That's all it is. You're masquerading as an American ally, but you're not. You're not an American ally. You're not a rules-based order. You're corruption of the highest order. And how can we fight? And it's all because of Marxism, isn't it? It's all the Marxists, you notice. You don't notice, but I do. It's all the Marxists, it's all the leftists, all the corruption is the left, almost entirely. Look at the Labour Party scandals, time and time again. Tax evaders, landlords. All of them are landlords too, by the way. It's all hypocrisy. It's all about eroding the right, isn't it? Getting the right into this mindset, attacking landlords so that weak-minded people won't rise up, band together and become landlords of their own buildings together. Because they're afraid of being landlords, because they don't want to upset bejesus. Meanwhile, the left are just laughing at you because they use it. They use Christianity and other things to just oppress you, make you a prisoner of your own mind. So why should I care when someone attacks me personally? Why should I care? I've seen you crybabies before. You want me to change my mind about Ukraine? No, how can you? How can you when you don't know about Ukraine? When you know nothing about Ukraine? It's just a cause to you that you just bandwagon that you leapt onto because you're a worthless unachiever. That's why you jump on bandwagons. You don't want to do any hard work. You want to be celebrated and famous. I don't know what got it into your head. Right? I think you're the next Hassan Piker, I guess. Without realizing they're all psyops. All the people who succeed on Twitch, they're all from the same talent agency. They're all they're all friends with Dan Clancy. They're all protected by Dan Clancy and the board. I bet you all the people at Twitch, all the moderators, all their views, I bet you their views count 100x. I bet you all the body is internal. I bet you all the influence peddlers at these organisations don't care. But it will as aid money dries up and economic competition becomes stronger. They won't last long. You look at the vast differences in YouTube channels. It's all psyops. All the people are the insiders. You know, so people like me don't get a chance, and you all hope I will go away. But it ain't happening. So I don't get why someone can go on YouTube, complain they're oppressed, and they have 1 million viewers, and they complain they're oppressed. Oh, pity you, you're oppressed. Oh, well, really, you got 1 million viewers, and you want more, and you keep asking for more, and you keep getting more. That's the sad part. Yet little old me, trying to ask people to subscribe, and they just unsubscribe instead, out of spite. So fine, I'm going to keep asking people to subscribe. There's some people out there who aren't worth the time of day. They're not worth saving. I mean, the few people who come this far, you're worth saving. And you're doing it yourself, not me. I'm not saving you. You are. So thank you. But please consider going the extra mile. 70% of you aren't subscribed. Please subscribe. Please support the channel. I really do need the money. It's coming to that time again. Last year I needed help and didn't get it. I almost lost the channel. And again, I'm coming to that point where I may soon need to get a new computer. I'm just going to have to save, aren't I? Because I ain't getting help yet. Multi-millionaire Hassan Piker can beg for $5,000 and get it. I don't understand people anymore. I really don't. It must be something about the left that are so gullible that is it, isn't it? That I'm on the wrong side of the fence, that I need to be on the left in order to get financial support. Don't make sense to me. When I actually sell a product, yet the beggars seem to be winning. And that's the sad part, isn't it? The beggars and the ethos are winning. They're winning on multiple fronts. Because the truth is not popular. The truth is not sexy. The truth doesn't stimulate people anymore. It's not sensational enough. It's not explosive. So thank you for coming this far with me and putting up with my rant. All my links are in the link tree, description below, or in my profile. But you just scan the QR code on the screen and get my link tree. Bye for now.